Hey everybody, you're watching CAD Roll Hunter, and we have two rolls of BU, Brilliant Uncirculated Pennies, Canadian pennies from the 1960s. Supposedly these have been unsearched, just re-rolled because the wrappers had broken down. And we're going to see if there are any errors or varieties in here. Stay tuned. Hey everybody, it's James and you're watching my channel CAD Roll Hunter, and Pierre reached out to me. He and I have done a trade in the past, and he said he had a few things he wanted to send my way. One of them was this, or two of them I suppose, are these rolls of Brilliant Uncirculated Canadian pennies. You can see they're from 1962 and 1963, and there might be some really cool varieties in here, and we're going to look and find out. He also sent me a couple of uncirculated rolls of US pennies. These are 2024p and 2025p. So Philadelphia minted pennies, and of course the penny has been discontinued in the States. So I don't know that either of these are exceptionally low mint, probably the 2025 relatively so. But I'm not going to open these guys up. I'm going to hold on to these for now. If we find that there are some errors or varieties that might be in either of these couple years that'd be worth looking at, we might do that. But I think I'm just going to hold on to these guys. But these ones here are in customer rolled coin wrappers. Now, Pierre told me that the wrappers that he got them in, they were falling apart. He put them in this, and he hasn't searched them. They all look to be Brilliant Uncirculated. But he wrapped them back up in this. It's actually sealed up pretty well. So if I wanted to just preserve them against the elements, this might be good. But we're going to get into these and have a look. There are a few things in particular that we want to look for. So one is the hanging digit, the die clash. You know what? I'll get the coins out of the wrappers and we'll take a look first at what we're looking for. Now, I already know that some of you are cringing, worried about how I'm going to handle these coins. I've got the gloves out, so I'll at least put on a glove as I go through this. What we're going to do is scope them all looking for those varieties, but I'll get them out of here and then we'll talk about what we might find. So here it is out of the plastic, and you can just see how gorgeous this penny is. I don't know if they've got a 62. As nice as this one. I'm hoping then that they're all going to be like that. Just beautiful. One of the things we will be looking for are ones with a cameo frosted appearance. That is possible, and this one here almost seems to have that. It was just looks a lot like a proof coin, of course, but we didn't have proof coins in 1962. They would have been called specimen coins in the uncirculated sets, but these I think are all just uncirculated coins that were intended for circulation. And sometimes early on in a die's life, you could get that cameo frosted appearance. I'm going to get this out of here very carefully. I'll lay it down and then we'll take a look at one under the scope to get started. So I've got it open and I'm kind of spilling these out, and they all look to be just gorgeous. Wow. Look at that, just gleaming. So these coins have certainly not been circulated, at least at first glance, but what you can see, some spotting, that's really just exposure to air. While these were wrapped up pretty tightly, they might have gotten a little bit of the elements to them in the, oh goodness, 60 some years they've been around. I'm going to throw this guy under the scope here, and there are a few things in particular we're looking for. So one is the very common die clash. It is the hanging two variety, and you would see a die clash, basically a line that looks like the two is hanging from the maple leaf, and that is actually a result of a die clash where the two dies made contact, and this line from the queen's neck is impressed upon the other side of the coin and creates that line. Other things we're looking for is any sort of double date. There is some die deterioration with some pretty significant doubling on the date. That's the one thing we want to look for. Another one is the guitar or harp variety. We want to see if there are lines going down from the one to the leaf. And then lastly, there is a variety that is called the missing M, and you can see the designer's initials here, and there's an M right there. If I get up close enough, you can see it. There are varieties that have been recognized that are missing the M, probably because of some dye polishing and such things. So we're going to check all of these under the scope and see. I won't do it all with you. I'm going to go through a few. If I find anything interesting, I'll pull you in. The chances of finding any of these, it's hard to say because the dye clash was very common. We might see that on a lot of coins, but if these all came from the same dye pair, we might not see any at all. Same thing with the guitar or harp. So I'm going to get started. I'll pull you in if I see anything interesting. The Coins in Canada website has some great images. Here is the 1962 hanging 2. You see that line there. There it is in close-up. And there are other pictures on here we could find for some of these other varieties. So we may as well take a look at that here. Here is a double hanging 2. The dies struck in slightly different positions. And here is some of the doubling on the date we can find. There's another version of that. And then there is the missing M. And here's what's known as the harp variety. The guitar is essentially the same thing, but these lines extend all the way down from the one to the leaf. That's a really, really cool one to find if we are so fortunate. I'm probably just about 6 or 7 coins in, and this one here is showing signs of being handled for sure. So it's possible that at some point in time, someone has touched these coins, maybe even searched them or looked for the varieties we're looking for, but you can see these are all fingerprints. So that might be one person one time touching the surface of the coin, and the oils from the fingers have just stayed on there, and this is what it looks like over time. I mean, this one has a kind of cool look to it, but what we'd like to see is just bright red. And we're not finding any of those varieties just yet, although I'm looking at all of them. I can see the little M there. I'll just throw another one on here. There's a couple that look pretty nice. These don't all have those fingerprints. So none of the hanging varieties just yet. None of those other elements we're looking for. There's the M. I'll look again because I almost forgot to look for the guitar or harp. Here's one that looks pretty dandy here. Nice and bright. Nothing on that one. So far they all look like normal uncirculated coins. All right, we've found something here. We're maybe about 10 in and got one under here. And I've zoomed in quite a bit because there's a couple things going on. This one is missing the M, and I've taken the loop to it to get a really close look. It is not there. So that might be that polished dye. And you can see the G here is really weak. But we've also got some extra metal here. So that could be a little bit of a dye crack. It could be some kind of a lamination issue on there. That's an interesting one, and I haven't flipped it over to look at the other side just yet. But that looks to be a fairly regular coin on this side here. But we found one. We found a recognized variety. This is in the Hans Zoll guide, and if you remember, Hans Zoll documented errors in varieties or dye varieties back in the 60s, and he found this one. That's pretty cool. We've got the missing M. Got another one here. This one has the M. I can see it. It does still have some roughness there, so I'm thinking that's something on the die, like a bit of a die crack, and this might be an earlier state than the one that we saw, where there was more polishing, so the M was gone, and this was more visible in later stages, so that's pretty cool. So here's another one here. I'm seeing a lot that have just a slight little metal line there. The M and the G are all on there, but I found another one. I'll slide this over. This looks like the last one we saw, where there is a big sort of fold of metal there. Very interesting. And the designer's initials are very difficult to see on there. And I guess that is another missing M. I think we can safely say that. In fact, I can't even really see the G. I'll have to take the loop to it, but we found another one, and this is exactly what we saw on the last one. Very interesting. Here's another one that's probably in a bit of a mid-state. The designer's initials are still visible, but you can see more of this metal here doing whatever it is that it's doing because of the state of the die. So This isn't quite there yet. It hasn't been polished away completely, and that die crack that's on there hasn't completely developed. So it's interesting to see we've got different stages of dies here. So I'm still hopeful we could find something in this little shiny pile that might be the guitar or harp or a doubling on the date or even a hanging digit. We haven't got one of those yet. And some of these coins are just gorgeous. Like, you just don't see them like this out of bankrolls very often. So this is pretty fantastic. Well, we're going to get our first hanging digit in this roll, and it's going to be in a little bit of an unexpected way, because as I looked at this coin, it is not a 1962, it's a 1963, and it appears to possibly be the double hanging 3. It looks like there's one line there, but you can see the separation up there comes right through the 3. We've got the double hanging 3 in what we thought was a roll of full 1962s. So we got one of those. That's great. And of course, we still have a whole roll of 1963s to go, so we might still find more of those, but that's pretty cool. Well, I was hoping we might find that guitar or harp, because that's a really cool variety to find, but we did find a couple with the missing M. That's a cool minor variety. And of course, the surprising find in the roll of 1962s was the 1963, and a gorgeous one too. That's the double hanging 3. So what we're going to do now is get into the 1963s. Who knows, we might find a surprise in there. And I'll get these out, but they look like they're probably just as beautiful as those ones were. So these look just as good as the last roll. The surprise, of course, is that we've got a 1962 on one end, but everything else does appear to be 1963. So that might just have been when it got wrapped up again. One might have got mixed in with the other, but these coins look gorgeous. So I'm going to start throwing these under the scope. Well, we'll look at this 62 here. It's our last chance for the guitar or harp, which we don't have. And we'll look again at the initials. They're both there. So I'm going to throw this one in this tubed up 1962 roll. And doesn't that look beautiful with all those red edges? Well, here's the first 1963 in this roll, and it's got the hanging 3. And I was a little bit surprised we didn't find any in the 1962s. Maybe a bit more surprised to find a 63 with a hanging 3. But that is a pretty common issue, but there are other die clashes that we might be able to see. So sometimes we'll see a line in front of the queen's face. If I see the back of her head, we might see some lines from the maple leaves in different spots. I'll look for all of those. There are other die issues that we might find pretty much on any year, right? We can find die chips and little metal accumulations and things like that, die breaks, and so I'll look on all these to see if there's anything interesting. But, you know, this is just a beautiful coin with that hanging 3. I'll set this aside. I might flip some of these hanging varieties up, or if I've got enough of them, maybe put them all in a separate tube. But that's a gorgeous coin. And I just want to pick it up and put it in hand, because these coins are just gorgeous in hand. Anytime you put it under the microscope, you're going to see any flaw, any discoloration. Like, you can see a small little spot in the end. In the microscope, that looks huge, but in hand, this is just a gorgeous coin. There's no question. And we might find a whole bunch. This is just the third coin, the very next one, and you can see it's got that line right through the 3 like we saw in the first one. Really, really cool. And I flipped it over, and you can see there is some scrapes and some damage. I thought at first this might have been part of a die clash. But I don't see any other die clash markers on this coin. And if I open up this page I've got on Coins in Canada here, you can see some images of where some of the clashes are, including one that is right at the back of the neck in that spot I just showed you, but I don't see any of the other markers. So it'd be hard to definitively say that that was any sort of a die clash when there's clearly some kind of damage on the coin too. So this is going to seem crazy, but every single penny that I've looked at here has had the hanging 3, except for just this one. And there's 2 different varieties. I've got 2 under here. We're finding them, they're one or the other. So this one, a little bit of an unfortunate black spot there, but you can see that hanging 3 right up to the top of the 3, right? And then this other one is towards the left of the 3, and it's going right through to the middle of the 3 there. So we're finding them, it's one or the other. So 2 different dies were involved in this sort of clash, but that's really, really cool. So a lot of these are commonly showing minor die clash on the obverse. We're seeing this little line here on a lot of them. Probably not very noticeable. This one's got some scratches as well, but many of them show at least that little bit right there. So that is really remarkable. These are the 5 coins that didn't have the die clash. Every single other one of these BU pennies has the die clash, and almost all of them have a very small little clash on the obverse that I showed you earlier. Really remarkable. And so what I'm going to do is find a tube. I'm going to tube them up and mark them all hanging 3s, and I'll find another place to put these guys. And there was one more 1962 in there that I'll try to get into this tube if I can. These tubes don't actually hold 40 or 50 copper pennies, because the copper pennies are a little bit thicker, and it seems like this one was engineered for ones that are a little bit thinner, so it probably only holds like 47. I find that with these wrappers, when you're trying to put pennies in them, they get so far to the top you can barely hold them together. You got to put tape on them like Pierre did here. Well, that was very cool. I'm going to find a tube for these guys and put them all in there. All right, all tubed up. There's our 1962 BU coins, and here are 1963 BU hanging 3. There's 44 of them. I added the 5 1963s that weren't hanging 3s to this roll of BU 63s that I have. Remarkably, none of these have that. I've found a handful when I've gone through. But I love a good old variety search because you just never know what you're going to find. And we did find a couple of cool ones. Well, we found a whole whack of cool ones. But we got a couple of the 1962 missing M's. I've flipped them up here so I don't miss them. I just had way too many of the hanging 3s to flip up. If I'd found a couple of them, I probably would have put them in flips. But when you get 44 of them, it just doesn't seem like that's a good use of my time. I can just tube them up like that. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. It's a little different for me. Every once in a while, a good old variety hunt is lots of fun. And thank you so much to Pierre for sending those rolls to me, which gave me the opportunity to do this. And we found lots of cool stuff. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the thumbs up. And of course, if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, Cadroll Hunter, hit that button so my videos will keep coming at you. I'd appreciate that. Thank you so much for watching. I always appreciate it. Until next time. The sponsors of today's video are Lighthouse Canada and the Charlton Press. Lighthouse Canada is the leading supplier of high-quality numismatic supplies in Canada, and the Charlton Press is the leading publisher of coin and paper money catalogs and price guides for Canadian collectors. Go check out their online stores today and use the exclusive discount code CRH20 for 20% off all your purchases.